Hi everyone, and welcome back to Tea with T.E.S. And I'm here today with a very special human being who goes by Genevieve when she is out of drag and Cyril when she's in drag, as a he. Welcome. Welcome both of you.
Thank you.
Today's tea is bint. I hope that's okay with you.
It's very hot.
Are you okay?
Yes.
I should have a warning about the heat of the tea.
I'm okay.
So I thought we would start with, how is your experience going so far on season 2 of Drag Heels?
It's been really great, and I think that the primary reason for that is actually the cast itself. We're doing such a good job holding space for each other and making it comfortable and safe for us all to engage in this process in a very open and vulnerable way. That's also very genuine.
Amazing. So on a more personal note, you do a couple of things with your life. You do drag, and you've been doing that for how long?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I'm curious about how you got into that, and then I want to ask about your other career.
Sure. I mean, I got into drag, it was kind of like clandestine. So I had been a cosplayer for a long time, since I was like 12 or 13 years old. I started making my own costumes and dressing up, and I always wanted to dress up as the male characters, but never really took any significant meaning out of that. Although I really loved performing, and I really loved theater, and I really loved film, I didn't necessarily want to make a career out of it. And so when I left that field, I sort of felt like, well, you know, the arts are going to find their way back into my life somehow. I just don't know when that's going to be and what that's going to look like, but, you know, I'll figure it out. And then one night after work, a colleague really wanted to go out, and so we went to the local gay bar in Ottawa, and I saw drag queens for the very first time live. And loved it. Immediately was like, oh, this is excellent. And went to social media and made a little status that was like, if I was a man, I'd be a drag queen. And was very fortunate to have friends that were far more informed than I was at the time, who told me that, well, you know, you can be a drag queen as a woman, but there is also this thing called drag kings, and you could do that too, or you could do neither. Like, drag's actually pretty open. And I was like, what? And the moment I learned that, I knew I needed to do it. Well, when I decided after high school that I didn't want to go into the arts professionally, I went with the other thing that had been on my mind since I was a kid, and that was to become a therapist. And now I'm a psychotherapist, and I specialize in working with survivors of childhood trauma, so adults who dealt with interpersonal trauma in their childhoods. And then I also specialize in working with the T.E.S. LGBTQIA+ community, so people who may be, queer, and that's not part of why they're coming to therapy, but it informs who they are, and so they want to make sure they speak to someone who understands and respects that.
Yeah.
Or they might be, dealing with coming out of the closet, going through a gender transition, trying to figure out who they really are, and it's a real privilege of mine to be able to support people through that process.
So I'm going to transition now to something that we've talked about before, and that is that unfortunately you and I have both lost people very close to us to suicide.
I did lose my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, to suicide when I was 11 years old.
I'm so sorry.
And I learned later on that she had been taking medication for a long time, antidepressants, which were advised for her situation. And she had lost her job and not told anyone, including her doctor. And she couldn't afford the medication anymore. And so she suddenly stopped taking it because she couldn't afford it. And she was afraid to tell people. And one of the symptoms of cutting, a rather elevated dosage of an antidepressant cold turkey can be an increased thoughts of suicide and suicidal action. And that's what happened. That was, of course, very, very hard. And my whole family, who had been fighting to stay together, had to work to make sure we still did. And we've always been really, really close. And I think that's how we got through it, was supporting each other and being allowed to have feelings about it and talking to people about it and having that experience. And so it was hard because you both, at 11, understand and don't understand. I always think back to a couple of months before she died. She had given my brother and I a ride somewhere. And she was in the front seat of the car, and I had gotten out of the car, and we were being dropped off. And I remember saying, "I love you," and her looking upset. And that was so hard because after she died, in my 11-year-old brain, still a child, I go, that was the sign that I should have told somebody, and if I had, she'd be alive. Now, obviously, that's not true. I know that now. That one person seeing a sign of someone's sadness, of someone's depression, of someone's desperation and pain does not heal it, does not make it go away. And even if I had told my mother, who later, once I admitted that to her, in a moment of terrible shame, said, she did the same thing to me. We all saw it. You know, that wasn't on you to try to fix that, especially not at 11. But I carried that blame for a long time in ways that I hadn't realized that I did. And so when I thought about what do I want to do with my life, it just felt so natural. I went into becoming a therapist with this idea of if I can help one person see how loved they are.
Oh my God, yeah.
And make a different choice, everything will be worth it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. 10 years ago, I lost my father. And you're saying the exact same words that I've said because after I lost my dad, I created a one-woman show about his death. And in the show, I wove in the 10 signs to watch for when someone is suicidal. And I just wish that these things were taught in schools and churches and synagogues and wherever people gather. Because when I looked back on that list, he had 8 of them, 8 of the signs. And because we didn't know we were never taught what the signs were, it went unseen. And I've also seen with suicide that people instantly become detectives. I lost someone this week, a friend and a colleague, to suicide. And I saw the same thing happening again that I saw with my dad, which was, when did you talk to him last? And what did he say? And how did he seem? And everyone is so desperately trying to piece together to find a story, a narrative that makes sense, that can help explain something so inexplicable. And so when I did the show, one night, a young woman came up to me after the show and she said, we're very worried about our dad. And I talked to her for a while, and then the next night in the front row, there was a couple in their 60s, and they came up to me after the show and they said, we're here because our daughter told us about your show. And I had the exact same thoughts as you. I thought, if one father can see how much he will be missed, then it's all worth it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
An amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They say there's no doing it on your own. Got you thinking you're all alone. Hold up, step back, breathe in